Hey, what's up you guys? It's Simon. Welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I decided it might be fun because I've seen a lot of marker review videos going around and I have a few different brands of markers, so I thought it might be fun to share with you guys my specific opinions on some Copic alternatives since I spend so much time on my channel talking about how much I love Copics. So for today's video, I have technically two different brands. My main one that I'm going to be comparing though is the Blick Studio markers versus the regular Copic markers. I have, I'm going to say this wrong, they're like Neo Pico 2 markers, which is a brand by Deleter. It's like a big manga sort of, not stationery, but I guess just art supply company in Japan, so I have a few of their markers that I'm going to be showing you guys as well, but mainly I just want to show the comparison between these two markers because obviously these are, I don't want to say the two biggest brands going around, but Blick is definitely the biggest Copic comparison that I find because these have a brush tip and a lot of Copic alternatives don't. So, plus this was just the one that was relatively this was just the one that was immediately available to me. So, let us get started. So, the first test I wanted to do was blending. So I have these three by Blick. There is the 074, which is my darkest shade, the 039, which is my lightest shade, and the 038, which is the mid-tone. And the first thing I want to say is, I don't understand their blending group because as you guys saw, like this is a 074, which fine, 7 like Copic, the bigger the number, more likely the darker it's going to be. But then you have these two, the 039 and the 038. They're in the same first two blending groups, but for some reason the higher number is the lightest or the darker color. So I don't know what's going on there. But yes, so there's that, and then I'm just gonna get straight into swatching them. I'm gonna swatch them right underneath their designated circle, and then I'm also going to be testing the blending with the circle just because I see a lot of people testing blending with rectangles, which isn't exactly the best representation because most of the time when you're doing an illustration, you're not making straight up and down marks like that. Even with feathering, most of the time you're going to be going on a curve or something like that. So I figured a circle's just going to be the best way to test it. So I'm going to go straight into swatching. And the first thing I want to say about the brush tip on the Blick markers is they're not terrible, but they're also like a little bit hard to control. I find that they're a lot softer than Copic markers, and I know some say that they like when a marker is softer, but I really don't because I feel like just it's harder in general for me to control if a marker has a softer brush. I'm not really sure why it is. I just feel like obviously, like with these swatches, usually I can get like a straight rectangle or a square with Copic markers, but with these guys, they kind of just flop all over the place. And I just want to start out by saying, I don't think these markers are bad. Like, this isn't any sort of like negative, I hate these markers, they're the worst things in the world type of review. I'm just saying, like, overall, there's gonna be pros and cons to every single one of these markers. I'm just saying that for the moment, in this second, I don't like the brush tip on these. Like, you can see I just switched to the chisel side, which I almost never do. I only switch to the chisel when I feel like the brush is not getting the job done right. And usually for me is like, I use the brush tip for 90% of things, but then if I need like a big area, I use the chisel nib because that's what it's for. But sometimes, like, if I feel like it's not getting the area, like I noticed these are a bit drier. I don't know if it's because these are older, but at the same time, like when I think back to my Copics, some of them are upwards of 7 years old, and even if they haven't been refilled, They're like still super duper juicy, but these, like, some of them, all of my Blick Studio markers I got at the same time. I got them around Christmas for I think it was a set of 24. But yeah, I got them for Christmas a couple years ago, maybe around I want to say probably 2 or 3 years ago, and they're not horrible, like I said. It's just that some of them are really starting to dry out, despite the fact that I don't really use them that often. And then I do want to say, because a lot of reviews have said that these markers are not refillable, but as I was about to also add that to my cons list when I was doing the research for this video, I found out that that must have since changed because I was trying to find the exact pack that I bought for Christmas to show you guys like a price comparison, and I found refills on their website. So that is definitely something that is incredibly interesting and good to know. Their refills are about, I think, $5 a piece. So that is not too shabby. And then another thing I want to mention is that I don't know if it's just my pack specifically, but I had a really hard time finding colors that would be good blends. Like I'm sure they have more than just the set color range that I have, and I know I probably didn't find the best colors to blend together, but these were the like closest ones that I could get to actually form a smooth type of gradient. So there's not that much of a color selection in packs, I suppose I should say. The 24 set I had only had a few colors that were in a certain shade range. Like, I'll go ahead and say that for my 24 pack there wasn't a lot of skin tones, but here's all my notes. These three specifically are all set to be skin tones, but as you can see, they're like vastly different from each other, so they'd be really hard to show like a change, I guess, in color, like a good smooth gradient, all same consistent tones. They're just kind of like very varied. they're like two different undertones for every single shade, and so it was really hard for me to find three that would fit together good. But just because I have 1.5 million more Copics, I still wanted to stick to the same shades, so I tried to find the best color matching I could. So there is the B05. And I will say, as far as brush tips go, the chows are actually a little bit on the softer side as well. So the chows I find are a little bit hard to control, but the sketch markers are pretty firm. I love them. So there's that. But yeah, like I said, still, even the chow compared to the Blick, the brush is like way softer. And also, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to show you guys this well, but let me just show you the difference between the two brush tips, because I also noticed they're a bit of a different shape. Like, if you'll see the, let's see if I can be a beauty YouTuber for a second. So, the Copic is a lot more of like a straight taper, but the Blick is sort of like a, it's like a straight line and then it sort of goes in. It's really hard to explain. The Copic is like a consistent like shape where it starts and then it tapers in, but I feel like the Blick goes up for a little bit and then tapers, if that makes sense. Probably not, but you know. So there is that. It does have a little bit of a different shape, so I don't know if that also contributes to my not being able to control them as well. So there is that. And then I'll go ahead and do the blending for the Copic. And then, like I said with the Blick, I didn't really have like a difficult time so much blending them. It was just sort of like the fact that I didn't have that many colors to choose from. Like, I felt like I probably could have gotten a way smoother gradient if I just had like one more mid-tone and was able to like push that color back a bit, because like there just wasn't enough options to choose from. That, like I said, it's not like I'm not out here attacking Blick or anything. I do think they're like a pretty decent marker, especially for the price that you can get them. It's just that there's not enough colors to at least for the purpose that I'm using them, to do like, really like rendered, because my favorite thing about Copics is that they remind me of my digital paintings. Like, that's the entire reason I bought them, is because you can get such a smooth, like, flat illustration, and I thought that that was amazing. And so I really end up buying and using a lot of different colors when it comes to Copic, just because I want to be able to do like such like incredibly smooth, incredibly easy sort of gradients. So as you can see, I'm not doing a great job doing the circles. I'm struggling. I'm also doing this video to learn how to talk and draw at the same time, because like I said in my last video, these voiceovers are mega scary for me. I'm like one of those people that's really awkward talking in front of people and like doing all of these things. And believe it or not, even though I'm sitting alone in my bedroom, it's still like I'm in speech class and I'm standing up and talking in front of a bunch of people. So these aren't gonna be like perfect, because I am a little bit nervous. But I hope you guys don't mind, and I hope it still comes across as like a pretty decent, like, I guess, display of what each of the marker brands can do. So, let's see, what else can I do about this? While we're on the topic, I suppose, of refills, the one big thing I will say that makes, or sets, the Blick markers apart, besides their color choices, is the fact that the Copic markers, while they are both now refillable, I didn't see any nib replacements for the Blick markers. I don't know if I just couldn't find them or if I wasn't looking in the right place. If you guys see any, let me know. Throw them down in the description so I can link them up in this video. But I didn't see any replacement nibs, and that is an issue for me, because especially with the fact that, like I said, the nibs are so soft, they might not last very long. Mine, like I said, are about probably 2 or 3 years old, but I can't guarantee like the wear and tear on them, I suppose, because I don't use my Blick markers as often, so I don't know if they wear down very quickly over time. I don't know if like some brush tip markers have the fraying issue. I've never seen that in my markers. So, oops, camera turned off. Come back. Alright, so I don't know if they have that issue where they start fraying over time, or I've seen some people say that some markers, I can't remember exactly which brand it was, but have seen like something growing on the tip of their brush markers. So never happened to me with Copics. It did happen actually with one specific marker, but I think it was just because I let it get so dirty, because I like hardly ever used it, and the ink would sort of just seep out sometimes, and so it's sort of like got this like crusty layer around the brush nib. But that is where I want to get into. If something happens to the brush, there, as far as I've seen, is not a replacement, whereas with Copic, like when that happened to my marker, I just yanked the thing out and put a replacement nib in, but I didn't see replacements for that. So that being said, no replacements, but other than that, they are refillable, they blend pretty decently, and I'm not too mad at the Blick markers. I don't hate them, but there is one issue left with the Blick markers that definitely gets on my nerves, and that is I hate when the color on the cap does not match the marker. I know there's issues with that in Copic sometimes, like, let me find one. There's this one, which obviously it's going to be really hard to match, but that's a pretty strong color there on the cap. It's very vibrant. I don't know if the camera's going to pick up this color. I haven't really tested color balance or anything on my camera, but there is that color, and there is the swatch, and as you can see, this one is way darker, but it very rarely happens in Copic markers, and it usually only happens with those very vibrant colors that the cap does not match the marker. But in Blick, it's very hit or miss. No TikTok intended. Like, for example, this peach, it's very, very dull on the cap. It's very, like, it looks like a very, I guess, like, pastel. It looks like the peach color that you see on, like, the peach emoji and stuff like that. Very, very soft, very pastel. But then you swatch it, and that's, like, orange. That's not peach. Look at the marker cap. Cap next to the brush tip. Cap next to the swatch. It's incredibly orange, and I know I'm layering it, but that's just to show you, like, even a fresh swatch, that's not the same color. The very lightest tones maybe, but everybody knows you're gonna be layering these things up because you need to blend, and so the color on the cap is nowhere close. But on this one, there's this darker shade, and it is almost exactly the color that is on the cap. So I don't know why it's like that, especially for colors like this, where the color is very, it's sort of the opposite of the Copic. It's very dull on the cap, but very vibrant in the swatch. But with the Copic, of course, the cap was very vibrant, and the swatch was a little bit lighter. So there is that. Color matching needs a little bit of work. But overall, I would say I don't hate the Blick markers. And the only reason I'm not going to do a full-on illustration like some others do is just because, like I said, I don't have enough colors in the Blick markers to give them like a fair demonstration. I only have like a couple blues and some greens and stuff, and I'm not really a landscape illustrator. I'm working on that, but for the time being, I do only have these specific colors. So for my next little testaroonie is I wanted to look at smudging. And so smudging with markers, I'm just gonna do like some scribbles and lines here real quick. Smudging with markers is very, once again, no TikTok intended, hit or miss, because the main thing that you really have to pay attention to is if you're, this is not the best liner. It's not technically a liner. It's a Pen and Gear felt tip pen, but it's the closest thing I had. Normally when I do my line art, I do it afterwards, so this isn't really too much of a problem for me. But I don't have that many fine liners. I have a Tombow, I'm gonna say it wrong anyway, so it's the 2-pack calligraphy thing. I'll get them out for you guys. So there is, there's a, I guess like a firm felt tip. It's sort of just this. There's a little bit of give to it. It will, like, I'll show you, you can push it up and then you can make it thicker and then lighter. But it's generally a lot firmer, so there is that one. I'll go ahead and show it for you guys. And then there's the other one, and these do come in a 2-pack. There is this one, which is a much more flexible nib. And this one you can get very fine and then very thick, and it just moves way easier. But these always smudge. Every single time. Doesn't matter how long I let it dry. These smudge. Because that's not their intended purpose. They're not fine liners. They are just calligraphy pens. But this was the closest thing I had other than this Micron that is 0.005, so way too thin for me to actually do a decent test. But I'm gonna go ahead and test out the smudging. So I'm gonna go with the lightest color in each brand just so you guys can see pretty decently like how much smudge there is. And then as I was saying with smudge, it really depends on if the liner is wet or not. So I'm gonna do 2 swatches afterwards where I'm just gonna swatch the pen and then immediately put the markers over it. So these have had a few seconds to dry. Usually I would recommend waiting about 10 or so minutes after you have sketched and lined your image before you go into coloring. But for video purposes, I'm just gonna go in straight away. You'll see this is the wrong side. This is the Copic. But as you can see, there's not that much. There is a little bit you can see right there. But again, that is just because I didn't give it enough time to dry. And then there is this side over here. You swatch it over, and there's not really that much smudging on those either. So I can say pretty matter-of-factly that if you give them both enough time to dry, unless you're going over and over and over, watch, probably, oh, not even, that's pleasant. Even if you're going over and over and over the same spot, most likely, it's not going to smudge. And that is some of my favorite things. Even with a crappy liner, like remember, this is frayed. It came in a 20 pack, so it was probably 20 cents for one fine liner, and it's still not smudging. So that is really, really good. And then I'm going to show you guys it wet. So there is this one, literally just put down. I'm gonna take the Copic first. And then you can see, obviously, right here, it does have a little bit of smudge. I'm gonna scooch it just in case it's out of frame, because I'm still learning to do that. So there is a little bit of smudge, but surprisingly not that much. And then I will do the same with the Blick. Make it a little bigger, because that's not the same size. Okay. So, swatching that one. Obviously, it's a little harder to tell because it's a bit darker, but it does have a little bit of smudge. So both of them, if you just let them sit for a second, they will most likely be perfectly fine. So, right away, I'm just gonna get into the pros and cons for the Blick markers before I talk about the other brand, just because, like I said, I wanted the Blick markers to be the main point of this video. For the pros for the Blick markers, they are cheaper. For a 24 pack, they are $99.60. So 24 packs aren't really a thing for Copic markers, but I did try and do my best to find a similar pack. So I found a 24 pack on Amazon. I believe they're selling from Copic that are $111. So you are spending about around 12 or so more for the same amount of markers, and they are brush nibs. So there's that. You're not paying like such a huge amount of money for like a little teeny bullet nib. Like they're brush markers. So there is that. That is very good. They do blend pretty decently, as we can see with the sketches here, so that's a good plus. And then they are refillable. I don't know when they decided to start doing that. I had always assumed that they were not refillable, but I did find some. Maybe I'll link some down below if you guys are interested in that. I don't know if you already have these markers, but overall they're pretty decent. And then for the cons, I would say, despite there being a few different packs, I still think that there's like quite a smaller range of color, and there's also there's also the issue with the colors and the blending groups not really matching up. Like there was the 038 and the 039. Sometimes a higher number signifies that it's darker, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know where they're getting their logic on that. I don't know if they're just throwing numbers on the caps because the Copics have numbers on the caps, but it doesn't really match up. It doesn't really make too much sense as far as their blending groups go. And then I also, like I said, I couldn't find nib replacements. I couldn't find one for the brush chip. I couldn't find one for the chisel nib, and I would not recommend trying to put Copic brush nibs or chisel nibs in these markers, just because I don't know if that's gonna work. And the final con I have is that the color caps, big pet peeve. It's really hit and miss on whether or not they match up. So take with that what you will. Overall, I think Blick markers are a pretty good Copic alternative, especially if you're on a budget. I would definitely try these out. So let's get on to the next thing. Obviously, they both bleed through pretty bad. So, luckily for us, the bleed through doesn't really matter for this portion of the video, because mostly I just wanted to talk slightly about these markers. I'm not really gonna be doing too much fancy blending tests or anything. I just wanted to show that these are markers that exist in the world. So these are the Neo Pico 2 markers. They are from Deleter, and no shade to Deleter because they are like a very good company. They have like really good pens and erasers and paper and all that. I just don't like these markers, and I will tell you guys why. So, the first thing that I want to get into is they're very fragile, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that they're fragile because, oh, wow, it's on. Okay, so obviously didn't intend to do this. The cap got stuck on there because I'm trying to show you guys. Wow, it's like it really doesn't want me to show you. First thing I want to do is show you guys this cap. Now keep in mind, these markers I bought at a convention 2 years ago. So they're not that old, and I also only used them for the 3 days that I remained at the convention after buying these markers. And it was not frequently because we were out at the convention and not in the hotel room. So keep in mind, have hardly ever used these markers. And one of the brush nibs looks like this. I don't know how this could have happened. Like I said, I'm not rough with my markers. I'm very gentle. I'm very scared of things like this happening to my markers. And the worst thing about it was, it's not as if I pushed down and ripped this part. I literally put the cap on it, put it in the car, left to go home from the convention, came back, decided, you know what? I'm gonna give those markers another look. Maybe I was too harsh on them. Opened that color up, saw that brush tip, and was like, you know what? Maybe I wasn't too harsh on these markers. So, the next thing I want to get into. I mentioned that these markers were only 2 years old. So, why does this marker look like this? The writing along the entire marker is rubbed off. Despite the fact that, like I said, I only used them for 3 days and then the 1 day where I decided I was going to give them another look. But somehow, every bit of writing has rubbed off, and it comes off very, very easily. Like you can see, I can probably just scrape it off right now. Yeah, that part, gone. Despite, it's not like I'm using them and rubbing them up and down and all over the place and squeezing them and doing a bunch of this sort of thing. I didn't use these markers. And I'm gonna show you, I'm sure what you guys are thinking is like, yeah, it's printed on plastic. It's gonna fade. This is a marker that is 2 years old. This is a marker that is upwards of 7 years old. And I know that this is a very old marker because here's the thing. This marker is called Skin White, which eventually turned into be a bit of a problem. So people wanted Copic to change the name, which they did, to Cotton Pearl, like it is on the refill. So this marker I have had since when it was still called Skin White. It's a very old marker. This was in my first set of Copic markers ever. I bought the 6-pack that came with E00, E11, 13, 15, R20, and I believe E18 was the pack. This marker came in that 7 years ago. And the label, nothing has faded, even the slightest. Not a scratch, nothing. But this, the label's gone. So I don't know what to say about that. I don't know what could have possibly happened to that marker to make it rub off in that way. So that's a little bit irritating, especially because a lot of the printing on those types of markers, because these are brush tips as well. These are brush tips, dual-ended, chisel nib on the other side. So there's no way, other than the banded ring around the side of it, to tell you which side is the brush and which is the chisel, besides the writing. So, there we go. If that writing rubs off, you better hope you can remember that the banded edge is for the chisel. So the next one, and I did mention this issue with both Copic and the Blick markers, but it really gets on my nerves in this brand just because the difference is so striking, and that is the cap issue. So we have these two. I'll show you. This is a very nice, and a lot of the time people are buying markers for the cap color, especially I bought these at a convention, and I will get to why that also irritates me. I bought these at a convention, and I bought them for the cap colors to coincide with Copic colors that I did not have at the time. So obviously I told myself I needed a very nice pastel blue. As you can see from the cap, very beautiful, icy little blue. Then I saw the brush and I got scared, and I had every right to be scared, because does that look like a pastel blue to you guys? I don't think so. In fact, it looks very similar to that bright little blue that we used before, almost exactly, if not like one shade lighter. So obviously that didn't help me out too much. And then the next one, as you guys can see, this is a very vibrant sort of wineish purple shade. It's very, very pretty. I had almost no purples at the time, so I thought this was going to be a really, really great color. And then I swatched it, and it's very gray. It's very desaturated compared to the very wine, very rich color on the top of the cap. And as you guys can see from like me swatching them, they're not bad. The brush tips, when they're not falling apart, are awesome. But there's just like, why doesn't it match up? Why is the label rubbing off? Why are some of them just like imploding? Like, I don't understand how that marker even got anywhere near that condition in a 3-hour drive home. I honestly don't. And it's not as if I just threw them in a bag and left. I stored them very nicely, treated them like Copics, and that one still just exploded. But then you have colors like this. It's just brown. Swatch it. It's just brown, and it's fine. But most of the colors are not like that. Most of them are along this like completely random, absolutely not even close to the cap color. And I will say, I did buy these 2 years ago, so I don't know if they've since changed their formula or made anything better or anything like that, but as for the condition that mine are currently in, I absolutely despise these markers. I tried not to, I tried to give them a chance, but I despise them, and the main reason that I do is for the price. Now, if you look on Amazon right now, these markers are selling for about, I'd say, $3 a piece, like $2-ish if you're lucky, a piece on Amazon, and $7 will get you a 3-pack, which obviously you might be saying, Simon, you're spending $7 for 3 markers. That's the price of a Copic marker. Yes, it's gonna be way, way worse quality, but here is the thing, is when I purchased them at that convention, they were $5 a piece, so about the same price as a Copic Chow, which I have a problem with, because one, it wasn't some random individual artist deciding to sell these markers. It was a deleter booth. They had all deleter products. I don't know if I found like a third party but was selling completely deleter, or if it was like actually just a deleter booth. Either way, it was all deleter products, and these were $5 a piece. So I was expecting, yes, of course, $5 a piece. They're pretty small, they're a circle, they should be similar to Copic Chow. No, no they're not. They absolutely are not. I also didn't see anything that had any sort of reference to a refill, so as far as I know, they're not refillable, and I also didn't see any reference for a whether or not the nibs were replaceable. So there is that issue as well. I hate these markers. I'm so sorry. I wanted to like them, especially because some of the colors were really cool, and like I said, the brush tips were not that bad. But for the price that I paid for them, for the fact that they're falling apart, even though they're only 2 years old and were very, very slightly used, I cannot say to go out and spend your money on these, even if you are on a budget. Please just go get the Blick markers. I promise you will have such a nicer time, and I love you guys, so I want you to get markers that are good quality. So with that, I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video, and remember that all of this is just my opinion. If you want to go get these markers, do it. If you think I'm full of crap, or if they've changed their formula and you love these markers, let me know in the comments. Tell me I'm wrong. Maybe they've changed. Maybe I should give them another shot. I don't know. Or maybe just tell me whether or not you like the Blick markers more than the Copics, or if you like the Copics more. Start a discussion. Let me know your guys' opinions down below. Thank you guys. I love you so much, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.